Folks, this is a wonderful turnout, and I've got to thank our candidates because this is also the largest group of candidates that we've had in the region. We've got all but one. We have an apology though from Mark Colton to say he will be here, but he's got they had cloud problem out at Broken Hill where he was today for the aeroplane. He's got a flight at Dubbo, which he's done. They're actually landed, and he's got to drive from Dubbo to get here. He hopes to be here by about 10 to 7. And by the way, we've got our friends here from all over the joint, so it's a big commitment, folks. We thank you very much. We know it wasn't easy. I didn't give you much notice. And we've got our friends over here from Wilcannia. That's a big call, rained all the way, they tell me. They must have come the tar road. But welcome to Narrabri, and you'll probably leave here after buying real estate, I would no doubt think. Folks, how we're going to run tonight is that we'll, our candidates, for various reasons, Mark Colton will be last, because he's asked to be last to give him time to get here. Trish Rail will, they'll introduce themselves when they get up, or I'll introduce them when they get here. She will go first because she's got an electronic meeting to attend straight halfway through this, and we respect that. But what is really good, isn't it, is that we've got a lot of candidates willing, and they think Narrabri is important enough to turn up. And I think that's fantastic, I really do, because we think it's important enough to turn up. And we really appreciate the fact that you have. Narrabri Chamber of Commerce is the independent group in town. We're an independent forum that you can turn up and have your say anytime you like. We've got a large chamber, a powerful chamber, where our birth was 1927, we're still going. And Cheryl and I were not running it at that time, just for your information. But we're there now, and we're delighted that you could support us in this way and turn up. So Narrabri Chamber has a long history of working hard. We're an independent group. We get no government funding at all. Probably it's tough to do that, as you know, we're all volunteers, and it's tough to do that. We depend on our members for events like this, our generous members for events like this. But what it does do, it allows us the opportunity to be independent, and we're not beholden to anybody, and there's no favours. Our favours go straight to our members. That's why we're there, our members and our wider community. And that's why we exist. So folks, without any further ado, our number one is Trish Frail. Now Trish has driven all the way from, Trish hails from Brewarrina, for those of us who haven't been out there. And she's come through Dubbo here today, so Trish, we really appreciate that, and I'll let you up here to let everyone know who you represent and what the Trish Frail story is. Thank you.
Thanks, Russell. First off, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that I'm not on my own country, that I am on the local country, and I just want to, and I do apologise, I did forget the name of the local tribe here, so I do apologise. Well, of course, yeah. So I do acknowledge the Kamilaroi people, all of the past, present and future people, and our elders and our emerging elders coming up. I'm Trish Frail. I'm an Nambar woman from Brewarrina. I'm a counsellor. I own my own shop. I own a cafe which specialises in all native food. Everything that I cook in my shop has to be native, and it's just absolutely brilliant, and I really love the fact that I keep learning more and more about our native ingredients. I'm a mother of 5. I am also a published author. I wrote a Bible about our own religion, First Nations people's religion, because it's never been acknowledged that we even had a religion, and which we did, and we still, every person who is every First Nations person in Australia still in some form or other follows our religion. They don't realise it, but they do it. And so what else about me? As I said, I'm a counsellor. I've worked at the council for years. I was community development officer with the council for a long time. I was also on the board of the hospital, and I've also been working in housing, and I used to represent the CEO at ministerial meetings, so I do have a fair bit of background. I'm so used to doing this that now it's just all going blank, and besides the fact that I'm so damn tired, because that's all we've been doing, all of us. It's just been driving around, going up to one meeting after another, and so yeah. What I'm very, very concerned about is housing, women's issues. Love my women's issues. I'm very dedicated to women's issues. Education, and free education at that, people have the right to be able to go and get their education and not pay for it for years afterwards. Like, people want to be able to finish university and get a job and start saving up to buy their own house, not to continuously pay a debt off. I'm extremely concerned about climate change, which is the whole reason why I'm involved in politics, is the fact that our local council wanted to build a nuclear waste dump in Bree. I said no. I started campaigning against it because, as far as I'm concerned, we've got the oldest man-made structure in the world. I want people to come and see that. I don't want people to come and look at a bloody waste dump. So we done that campaign. We were successful, and the one thing I did do was educate the people of our town exactly what is nuclear waste, and the fact that the damage that it does do to the environment. So we were successful, and I looked at the values of the Greens, and I thought their values are the same as my cultural values. So I thought, yeah, I'm going to get involved with the Greens. And I really love their policies, and the fact, one thing I really do love is the fact that I have a voice there, and they listen to my voice. And on a number of occasions, I've brought up issues that they hadn't thought of, and they've really taken it on board. So I do acknowledge that. I've been talking to a fair few people around Narrabri area, and some of the concerns that they've been talking about were the Pilliga scrub, the coal seam gas, and just the environment in general, and including the inland rail, which they plan to knock down 800,000 trees to go through Pilliga scrub. And so those issues are what everyone talks about. They really reflect me, and I am concerned about those issues, and that I know I will be supporting anybody in Narrabri who wants to stand up, and same in Liverpool Plains. I think I asked somebody to write me something, and so I don't know what the hell's down here, and I just Some of the things that what we are really concerned about, like I said, is housing. It's a major issue all over New South Wales, and we are really planning on working with governments to push for new housing to be built out here in the western areas. And I think, and it's not just new housing, but the renovations of housing. You know, some of the houses are just haven't been renovated for a long time. People want to move out our ways, but there's no housing for them to move to. And we actually, everybody has problems with the nurses, like getting nurses out here because there's no housing, same as getting the doctors, getting police and you know, all the government workers. Like, we need better housing, we need more housing, and how will we plan on getting the housing? How will we pay for it? Simple. The billionaires and large corporations, they do not pay any tax. So as far as we're concerned, it's about time they started paying tax. If you and I have to pay tax, well then why shouldn't everybody else? And I think that's all I'm going to say. If anybody wants to ask any questions.
Well, thanks, Trish. Thank you very much. And do we have any questions for Trish?
Thank you, Trish. I was just wondering, you talk about Brewarrina, is the population increased there?
No,
So
it's still decreasing.
has it always been a problem with housing there? Or is it just something new?
No, it always has been a problem with housing, and the majority of the population there are First Nations people. And the main problem with housing with First Nations people is overcrowding, because we have our cultural obligations to support each other and look after each other's families. So if a family comes into town, you know, if your brother or sister comes into town, well then they've always got a house, a bed.
Our housing's a problem across the board.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Any questions? I got one, please. This is not a stitch up. But what if Trish Spryer was to get up and win this show, what would that mean for the members of Narrabri District Chamber of Commerce?
Simple. You just have a voice. Yeah, and I am a good voice. I listen to exactly what people are saying, and I take it back. I analyse everything, and then I work out ways of how I can help, and if I can't help it, then I'll find a way how to help. And so, yeah, it's very simple to me. You have my voice.
Fantastic. Thanks, Trish. Thank you very much. Well done. Lucky number 2, all the way tonight. Number 2 contender, all the way tonight from right out west. And we've got Derek Harden. Welcome, mate. The microphone's yours. Give us the Derek story.
Well, I'll be Derek tonight. I was Stuart and a few other things in Dubbo, so happy to be myself. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the Gamilaroi people on the land we stand tonight. Proud Barkindji man from far west New South Wales. The Derek story. Yeah, and no, I ain't talking about myself, but that's all right. Why am I standing here? I ask myself this question all the time. Why would you go and put yourself through that? Travel around the countryside, trying to convince people to believe in you, vote in you. But you know what? Where I come from a long line of leaders and strong people that I've always believed that you have to fight the fight, and sometimes you've got to continually fight the same fight over and over. So when our rivers kept becoming dry, and our lakes and our fish died, and all these things that we've been fighting for way before the rivers did actually go dry, there was a few of us, and Owen's sitting up the back here, he's running for the Senate, for the Indigenous Party of Australia as well, and you're lucky you've got me as a candidate for the Cedar Parks. And I guess our passion, our commitment, not just to our people, but all our communities and everybody that lives up and down, we call the Barker, which is the Darling, the Namoi, all these things all flow in it, it's like veins, it all flows. And when they stop and we've got no water, everything, I guess our communities go into despair, our environment, our people, our suicide rates increase. All these things are related to basically water in our environment. And for us as Markinji people, I guess our culture, we also have native title holders. So we sit at the table, I'm the CEO, also of Markinji Native Title. I've been in that role for 5 years. I've been around in executive management and leadership for a couple of decades now. I'm only 48. I've got 4 kids, 3 girls and a boy. And I said at Dubbo, we had a dog once, even that was a girl. So talk about being outnumbered, but that's all right. Grew up with strong role models around me. My mothers, my aunties, my grandmothers, their sisters, and I guess that's what they paved the way for why I stand here today. And I think politics, I think it's for everyone. It's about putting yourself out there and having a go. I guess that's what Australia's about. It's about having a go. I remember the stories growing up. Like my grandparents met on a station. A lot of my family worked on properties for farmers, whether they were shearers, whether they were drovers, stockmen. So my grandfather, he was pretty well-respected drover and stockman, and he met my grandmother. And they didn't want to live on the mission, because a lot of our people got put on missions, and they didn't want to live on the mission. So they thought, well, let's just live on the road. And basically, they lived in between, Wilcannia, Ivanhoe, Moscow, Condobolin, right down to Balranald, and basically my grandfather and my grandmother and my mum was the second oldest. At the time, they just travelled around. And then when they were in Ivanhoe, I guess you talk about the old days, but no one would give my grandparents a house. No one would house them, so they went and lived behind the tip in Ivanhoe. So you learn your history, I guess my history, and some of my aunties don't like me talking about it, but it's reality. Our people couldn't live in town. And my grandparents actually lived behind the tip, and my mum and uncles and aunties talk about the times when the truck used to come to the tip and what people were throwing out and they'd keep and use and eat. So all those things about struggle, and that's why I guess I stand here today. Is like, I don't like seeing struggle, and I know it happens in our communities in all shapes and forms, whether it's housing at the moment, like it's a big issue. But who's making all the money? The real estate. End of the day, it's the same piece of land, same property. I remember in Broken Hill, 20-something years ago, you could buy a mining cottage for $20,000, $30,000. If you go to buy one today, you're looking at $200,000, $300,000. And I know Narrabri, 13,000 people, roughly. 12,000 of those are identified as Indigenous in the census. Your biggest industries, cotton, wool, wheat, sheep, and mining. So there's a big platform. And I guess we as First Nations people, we share the same sort of values that you think we might not share with you. Because I'm sure there's a lot of farmers out there, a lot of people that's been in the community. They've been here for a long time. They're a third generation, fourth generation, second generation, fifth generation. We're no different. We come from a long line of generations also, but we've been here from day dot. And all we want is to create a footprint that not only gives our younger generations to come, and the ones not even born yet, and ones down the track, I'm sure you all want to do the same thing, is leave a legacy that creates a footprint that looks a little bit brighter, you know, and we're forever fighting the same fight all the time for the same things. And if you want the same answers, and you want the same result, just keep voting the same way. But if you want things to change, the old people work in mysterious ways. That's probably why Mark his brain got brained in about Kenya, because he's on the land of our people. And everybody's saying, we'll delay Mark for tonight, and hope he don't turn up. But we believe in all those things, you know, and rain brings good things to our people as well. So we're about change, and we're about working with everyone. At the end of the day, we all get labelled all the time, put them in this basket, that basket. But you know what? Our biggest supporters, when we all come together and fight for the one thing, we can make a difference. And like I said, I haven't got all the answers, and I'm not here to stand there and kid you to say I have. But I also got a good set of ears. I was born with a good set of ears. They're good for listening, but they're also good for hearing. It's all right to listen, but it's better when you hear something. And I guess that's our biggest problem. Sometimes we listen, especially, you know what it's like growing up in the bush, you have that little voice out in the middle of the back there, it's like that little whisper. Well, it doesn't matter. But it should matter, and you should be just as heard and just as equal as everybody else. And that's why we stand up for who we are. We're not aligned to no other party. We're actually making history. And if you want to be part of that, that's where you put your vote. At the end of the day, I'm even number one on the ballot, so if that won't tell you something, I don't know what will. But ultimately, look, at the end of the day, look, it's a privilege to get around and be able to talk in the community. And I think the Narrabri Chamber of Commerce for extending the invitation. Look, we're not good at this. We don't do this every day. It's new to us. And we're basically, I don't think we're a used car salesman. I think we've got something new. I think we've got the shiny Ferrari out the front here. Not that it'll go very well in the paddocks out here, but maybe a brand new Land Cruiser. But things like that, I think, I don't know. Like everyone here, everyone's got their passions, everyone's got their beliefs, and we've got our own. And I guess my time's probably up, but that's all right. Any questions? I'm around. There's some posters and things there. So.
Well done, mate. You said you were. When we talk about listening, my wife says to me, she said, "You never listen." There's something else she said too. What's got wrong with myself? I'll think that later. But it's terrific, isn't it? And I'd like to ask you that simple question in a minute. So, the park's run by Derek Harden. What's that mean for my members, chamber members?
Well, it's changed. It's not the same old. Like, I've been around for 14 years delivering the same promises or the same things. It's a new voice. I'm a younger generation, not an old dinosaur yet. And I've got passion, I've got commitment to the people. And like I said, it doesn't matter who you are. Just because I come under this umbrella doesn't mean your values and your beliefs and what you believe in isn't important. And that's what I'm about. It's about being an equal voice and that getting in and sticking it to the government if we need to, in whatever area. And it's about your issues, not mine. I can tell you, basically, what you want to hear, but it's what I want you to tell me what are the issues and what's important.
Terrific. Well, we're going to find out whether sorry. Yep, we're going to find out whether there's other people want to tell you some issues here tonight. Have we got any questions, folks, for Derek? Up the back.
So where would your party generally stand on, say, economic issues? So thinking the issue today that seems to be a dominating issue in the final weeks of the campaign would be the minimum wage. Where would your party stand on that issue in particular?
Yeah. So I had a good think about this question. I knew it was coming. Economic wise, no. I've been around business for a long time myself. But I reckon, the way I see it, everything's going up. Inflation, interest, all these things. So why doesn't the taxable income, the amount you pay in tax, be reduced to match it? So you give a little, you take a little. So how do we create a level playing field that is fair for everyone? And I guess there's people that don't earn a wage, that are unemployed. We still got to support those people. We still got to make the country run. But at the end of the day, when we continually spend, you got to hit, what are we in, $1 trillion debt as a country? We're still giving out all this money, but what are we giving back to ourselves? And I guess, GST, there's 10%, then you pay 20-30% tax. So there needs to be a balance that creates equal. When something goes up, something's got to come down. And I think if we look at the tax system and go, look, I'm sure most people here pay 30 cents on a dollar. Even 1 or 2 points taken off that to help alleviate the stresses of living in the climate we do today will go a long way to shaping that. And look at all the things we do. I believe there's things, and we set one up in India as a start. It's not up and functional yet. But we want to set up community hubs in all our communities that are run by the whole community. And as part of those is about all the funding, all the spending that comes through your community goes through that hub. Then you haven't got duplicated services. Like you go to Wilcannia, $50 million goes through Wilcannia every year. And you know what changes in that community? Not a great deal. So for us, that's a waste of $50 million. I can do better things in Wilcannia with $50 million if you've got everybody sitting down at the table talking about these are the things we really need. $50 million spent on housing, $50 million spent on health, all these things that we can do a lot better spending other than just going, we'll give our mate this money, we'll duplicate it with this service. There's that many services probably in Narrabri. How many are delivering the same thing? So it's about how do we look at communities as a community, not throw a blanket over everything and saying, let's fund the same thing all over. It's like every community is different. And I think that's where we need to get back to communities being communities. Self-driven, empowered by themselves. That there in itself will save any government any amount of money.
Yeah, thanks for that. My name's Rowan. I'm just wanting to find out your thoughts on how the nation can work towards recognition of First Nations people in the Constitution, and what impact would that have for the people of Parkes if they were to be eventuated?
Yeah. And like I said the other night in Dubbo, I'm standing here in front of you. There's your answer. You're looking. We don't want to be appointed. At the end of the day, you've got all these things that people feel this is the answer to the Indigenous issues of this country. We stand here under our own umbrella, under our own party, as First Nations people. If you want that change, vote number 1 for Derek Hardman. That's your change in Narrabri. That's your change in the Parkes electorate. That's your voice. If you want to see an Indigenous person in Parliament, representative of the Parkes electorate, that's why I'm standing here tonight. Because that's where we see change. Like I said, we need to go to local, we need to go back, and if you have all the restatements, constitutional recognition, all those things, they're all little bits of gold that you can take good things from. People put some hard work in it, but it still doesn't give me a democratic right, because if I get appointed, or if I get put there, then I've got all my mob saying, well, you don't speak for me, you don't speak for us. So, whereas you can make that choice, everybody in this room, everybody in the Parks electorate can make that choice if they want a First Nations person to represent them in Parliament. That's why I'm here. That's the answer to the Constitution. And why should we get a front row seat? And if we don't earn it, I'm here to earn it. I don't see anyone else here standing here earning it. Oh, only Trish. But you know what I mean? We're here because we're genuinely serious about, we want to represent the people. Not just our people, but all the people.
Hi, can you tell me where your party sits on the euthanasia debate?
Well, that's the first time I've heard that. And like I said, I'm happy to sit down and take on anybody's concerns and issues. Happy to hear what you want to see change or happen. I guess I watched it was made in Broken Hill, Last Cab to Darwin. It talks about that youth, and so we're pretty famous for films our own. but I watched that with a bit of openness as well, and personally, if people feel that's something that is the way that they need to take that journey, I respect that decision. As a party, I think we need to sit down as an executive and talk about if that's an issue in the Parks electorate. How do we talk about that and look at ways that we can either advocate for it or against it, what's positive, what's negative, and go from there. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, oh, we'll do this, because it's not right. I don't want to give you any promises that I can't.
That answers your question, no doubt.
Yes.
I saw the movie too, wasn't it a good one?
That is a good
And I
movie.
take a fair bit of entertaining, but it kept me going. So, thanks mate, well done. We spent, wasn't it, number 3? Well done.
Thank you.
So, Ben will introduce himself. He's got a better story about Ben than I do.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin Fox, and I represent the Informed Medical Options Party. Thank you all and the Narrabri Chamber of Commerce for inviting us. Very appreciative. I am a high school teacher. I'm also a chef. I've got 3 kids. My oldest is here supporting me. And I've been married 20 years. I grew up in the town of Parks. And I met my wife in Penrith. So I moved there in 2000. I stayed 17 years, and in 2017, I moved back to the Central West to Dubbo. So I've been there since then, so nearly 5.5 years. And I've been teaching for 11 years. Before that, I was a chef. I've had my own small business in Penrith, where I was a cafe and a restaurant in 2003. And I also had a bistro in Warrington, which is the next suburb over. 2010, I started teaching as a hospitality teacher. So the reason why I'm standing here today is really one of protest. In the end, it's November last year, I was told that unless I participated in a trial, I would not be able to continue to work in my chosen profession. And so therefore I lost my only source of income. I'm the only income provider in my home. And it really cut us. And now I know that there's been in the news in the state parliament that 8,080 education staff were told to get their shots by February or will not be able to return to work. Of that, it's about 5,000 teachers. We know that there is a lot of teacher shortages. So I'm one of those teachers. In addition to that, there is the private system, Catholic and the other, non-denominational and denominational church schools who also have lost their job. And they are also all crying out for staff. We've got a huge staff shortage. And not only that, we have in other industries, in health, fireys, as well as other industries that have been forced out of their workplace. Now, basically, I believe that that is a gross injustice on my and their personal sovereignty. And so I essentially am standing here for the Informed Medical Options Party to send a message and to be that voice for all those people who recognise that they've been hard done by and their friends have been hard done by. Now, I've been down at the pre-polling the pre-polling at Dublin, and I've been having really good conversations with the Labor, the Greens, the Nationals, and they've been lovely. Every one of them. I've seen Jack down there. I even saw Mark down there, and your volunteers are amazing. And you know we've been having great conversations, but it struck me that even those volunteers have had somebody in their lives who've been impacted by these mandates, and I just am encouraged by that because I'm not the only one, and you know I'm not a politician. I never dreamed of being a politician. It never was in my mind. But when this happened to me in such a dreadful way, I believed that I had to be a voice for someone. And if no one else was going to stand up, then I will. I'm very fortunate that in Parkes electorate there are other candidates who are standing up against this. So I wasn't the only one, but I'm still going to go through. So that's me. I'm sure I could go on more, but I won't bore you too much.
You didn't bore us. Well done. That question, you know what it is. You've heard the others answer this question. So if Benjamin Fox was to get up and Benjamin was running Parkes, what's that mean to the members of Narrabri District Chamber of Commerce?
Well, commerce, small business, large business, I assume as well. Where the Informed Medical Options Party is for small business and men business to support you. And I think, like others have said, we want to be your voice and represent all the members of the Parkes electorate. And we have got policies in there that we want to see small business thrive.
Terrific. Well done. Questions? Any questions of Ben?
So if you were given the opportunity to be in the position of being in Parliament representing Parkes, how would you have done things differently in relation to the mandates, the lockdowns and the enforced jabs?
I and our party would be looking at the most vulnerable, and we would be looking to protect them as much as possible. We would not be encouraging. There's never been a time in history where I believe there has never been a time in history where healthy people have been isolated and set apart. And I would have been making sure that the vulnerable were looked after, were protected as much as possible, and I would have let the rest of us do the best we can. Obviously, at the beginning of all this, we had no idea what was going on. It was all new, and obviously I believe mistakes were made. However, we weren't to know what those mistakes were. But to carry on after those mistakes have been made is just wrong. And the harm that has happened, the mental health concerns that has happened through these lockdowns is just atrocious. I'm a huge supporter of Tradies in Sight in Dubbo. Bruno Foddy is a good friend of mine. And he is on the coalface when it comes to mental health and support first of all for tradies, but really for anyone. He opens his door to anyone. And the pain that's been done through this has been atrocious, and I would have hoped that we could have done that better.
So do you believe that small business should have been the forefront of the COVID police?
Definitely not. No, I believe, and I think even the police were hard done by. I've spoken to some police, and they were, they were the nanny state, and they hated carrying out those orders. It wasn't part of what they signed up for, and they were grateful to leave. Well, at least the ones I've spoken to.
Questions? No? Going. Gone. Thanks, Steve. Terrific, mate. Next cab off the rank is Jack. I'll let you explain your story. Welcome, mate.
Unless you want to do it.
No. I probably get it wrong.
Well, thanks everyone, it's great to be here. And fundamentally the principal question, or the foremost question on your mind would be, who the hell's Jack Ayyub and why should I vote for him? I grew up not too far from here in Coonabarabran, born and raised. At the age of 11, my mother passed away with breast cancer. It was a formative moment in my life. Within days of that event, my father fell off a roof and was badly disabled. I went from losing mum to looking after dad, trying to work and keep the household running. Dad, for his sins, was a terrible, supporter of the TAB. I spent a lot of time sitting on the step in the main street of Coonabarabran with a packet of Smith's chips and a can of Coke. You learn a lot doing that. You have some interesting conversations. Somewhere along that journey, I found music, found opera singing. I described hearing Jose Carreras come out and sing La solita storia del pastore. It was the first time I felt. Suddenly, the world seemed brighter again. Hope sprung well. I started imitating. Thought I could do that. And it turned out that I had a quasi-talent to do it. And so I imitated more and I took singing lessons, and there grew a passion and a talent for music. Just after my 18th birthday, my father passed away suddenly, with me unable to stop it. And then all that hope seemed shattered. It was only because of the intervention of a country community in Coonabarabran that raised over $30,000 for me, a Rotary Club that raised an additional $20,000, that I was able to go to Sydney University, attend the Conservatorium of Music, and reside at St John's College. And at St John's, I held court with senior council barristers, visiting fellows from Oxford University, and learned so much about life and what learning truly means. That was formative for me. A barrage, but formative. I then went off, lost 40 kilos, best part of me gone, to the Royal Military College for a brief time. Ultimately, that wasn't the place where I wanted to render service. It wasn't my place in the world. But I did it, and I'm proud that I got there. Those are the reasons why I stand before you today. Because those are the moments from which I draw my values. And I know that when regional communities are strong, when they are resilient and innovative and supported in it, they might just back up a young kid like me who finds himself in a hopeless situation with all the hope in the world. That's what regional communities do. And that is why I stand before you today, proud of Labor's platform and policies, because I believe that they look to the future of regional communities. Investing in 20,000 social housing properties, 10,000 for frontline workers, 4,000 for women and children fleeing domestic violence, venting the rental pressure we see and allowing people to move to the regions. That will change our communities. Ensuring that we have a long and consistent change to net zero that is adequate, but that is measured, that will see household power bills come back down by $275 a year to ease the cost of living and ensure we transition to newer energies. That's our future. Investing $1 billion in the rare earths that we dig up right across this electorate, and then making things here. Making batteries and solar panels and wind turbines, the technologies of the future, here. That's manufacturing jobs for us. That's another family in our community. It's another couple of kids playing on the rugby team. That's the future I see. It's a bright one. And there's no candidate here who won't tell you that we have a bright future. But the difference between aspiration, for us, is action. We have clear policies that will make a sound investment in Australia's future, a future that is without question born in the regions. I thank you.
You got that mandatory question.
Yes.
Jacko, you runs parks. What's it mean for the Chamber of Commerce in Narrabri?
Well, principally for the Chamber of Commerce in Narrabri, it means vigorous, ambitious advocacy. That's the role of an MP, is to advocate on behalf of his or her communities right across the electorate. It's a big task in parks. Narrabri forms one of many. But I think we need vigorous, ambitious advocacy, and I believe I provide it.
Terrific. Questions?
Hi Jack, Jim Purcell, I'm a consulting engineer. Interesting to hear your story and how you get into causes. Inland Rail's heading for Narrabri. Inland Rail have made some decisions on the route in the last 40 kilometres, which is an absolute shocker. Now, as an engineer, I find it embarrassing. It fails the test of economics, engineering and common sense. Basically, we have been trying to change that since 2018. Barnaby Joyce, the Honourable Member and Deputy Prime Minister, has told us in no uncertain terms the route will not change. Move on. This is giving impacts to Narrabri that's unnecessary. It's wasting between $100 and $200 million on a bad route. It's building unnecessary infrastructure. If you were successful in parks, how would you help Narrabri fix that problem?
Look, the first point is this. We will, if elected as a Labor government, build it. That's the first point. It will be built. I think there are actors running around with odd motives who would suggest that we won't build it. We will. But we will be guided by the Senate's inquiry in this matter. I've got it in my briefcase there and I've thumbed through it deeply. The Senate inquiry goes to all of the issues that you have spoken about. And fundamentally the point is that ARTC across the road have been so restricted by arbitrary guidelines in terms of 24 hours and others that they haven't been able to effectively consult. They may have had all good intention to do so. They may have had all good intention to look at other routes, but government sets in place arbitrary guidelines which prevent them from doing so. And that was a clear clarion call out of the Senate's inquiry. So we will be guided on that. We will come back to the table and say, look, how can we do this? There is evidence to suggest, presented to the Senate inquiry, that a route change that added 15 minutes wouldn't have a deep adverse effect on the business interests, but it would alleviate the concerns of community and it would allow for that route change. We may need to go to half an hour. Now we've got to be reasonable and realistic, you understand that, because it has to be competitive against the market in terms of road freight. But the point is this, what we will not do is railroad over communities, because that is not a good solution. That is not representative democracy. We'll be guided by the Senate report and we will look into these matters deeply and see where we can't alleviate pressure.
Question.
Thanks, Jack. Much appreciated. I'm Sally Hunter, and I just wanted to say thank you for the pledge that Labor has made. If they are successful to a community battery in Narrabri, that will change the landscape for energy locally, and it's much appreciated. The current coalition government has also pledged $600 million in federal government subsidy to the Kurri Kurri gas plant, and I believe that that is creating a false demand for the Narrabri gas project by creating that subsidy from the federal government. Will you support such a pledge if you also get into government?
Well, look, federally the party has supported it. I think that we can't be, and this is no reflection on your question, but in terms of the change of our energy makeup, we've got to ensure that we remain flexible. We know, if you talk to just about any expert in this area, that gas is going to make up part of the system. By the time we seriously transition, it's probably still going to make up 10%. So in terms of the investment in Kurri Kurri, we have supported it because we acknowledge that if we do want to make this change and secure large manufacturing and other energy production that we need in high demand, we're going to have to do that. That's not a perfect solution, I don't claim it to be. And if I were the person running the show, would I be simple to flick off the switch? I don't know. There's many more considerations to make here. But in terms of our domestic security and the security of our domestic production, I think this is a project that will have to go ahead.
G'day Jack, I'm a farmer from Boggabri. My name's David White. I'm not the public speaker that you are, so I've just written this question down. I'll just read it out. The state government recently approved the Narrabri underground extension, which will exhale 480 million tonnes of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. It makes it the second most polluting mine in New South Wales. This mine now requires federal approval, and it flies in the face of Australia's commitment to net zero by 2050. If elected, will you stand against this approval, or do you and your party believe, like the incumbents, that a government does not have a duty of care to protect the future generations of Australians?
It's a good question, and I'll start at the back and work my way through. In terms of the duty of care question, my knowledge of the law is a reasonable one, common law in this country, and it's a peculiar legal test in terms of the duty of care. So I'm not surprised that the court made the determination that it did. But in terms of the principles of that, I believe we do have a duty of care. Why else would we do these things if we weren't looking to the future? In terms of mass underground expansion, it's got to be looked at by case-by-case basis. And if it flies in the face of the ambition that we have to get to net zero, then it simply can't go ahead. And I think that any member for Parks, whomever they may be, has all the numbers behind them in terms of what this region produces in agriculture alone to advocate against it. And that's the job. It's advocacy. It doesn't mean you'll get a perfect solution, but you've got plenty of backup to make that advocacy effective. That's point number one. I think point number two is this. We are in a circumstance in Australia where the National Party has become a party that has tied mining and agriculture together, as though they're the same industry. They are not. The Liverpool Plains, be it a state matter or a federal, was under Shenhua mining licences. I mean, that is not the right direction for our country. We can go on producing food and fibre for the next millennium if we're careful about how we do it. But once we dig it up, it's stuffed. And why would you risk some of the most fertile soil in the world? That's the principal point here. We've got to get away from that sense that we only get advocacy from the National Party when it comes to agriculture, because the facts don't back it up. We can tout all the numbers and the economic growth and so on, but it's simply not the case. If you're supporting mining on prime agricultural land, and I note that there are large gas licences now across the Liverpool Plains, that is not a sustainable future. So, underline it all, we need to look at these things on a case-by-case basis. But, in terms of what you're talking about, it sounds like it doesn't stack up. I don't believe that it would, and I would be arguing against it. And I'll add that the investment that we will make in renewable energies will see that the market moves anyway. And once the market starts to move, and the big companies like AGL turn their investments around, these things become unprofitable. That's the direction we need to take.
Well, I'm afraid, folks, you've had your three. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next lucky number, Peter Rockwell, leave it to you, Pete. Thank you.
G'day ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pete Rothwell and I'm running for the Liberal Democrats this election. A couple of things, hardly any of you would know who I am. I'm a farmer from Mendoran. My parents have been farmers, my parents' parents have been farmers, and pretty much my entire family are farmers, so safe to say we are from the land. The Liberal Democrats, now it's a name a lot of people would not have heard of before, and we're slowly becoming a bit more of a force in politics. This year we're well over 100 lower house candidates, and so it's a really good representation. The best way to describe us would be old school Liberals. So we have a deep belief in the individual and small government, low taxes, and if we remove constraints from an economy, good people like yourself will drive the economy, and that's better for everyone. I've been very passionately involved in farming and driving innovation. I get a big buzz out of pushing the boundaries in yields and working with a lot of people. You can only ever do that sort of thing in conjunction with other people. No one person can come up with the great answers for themselves, and it's only through consultation that you can come to the correct answer, which is a great lesson, I think, moving forward into this little endeavour of politics. What I'd say, some of the big main issues that the Liberal Democrats see in this coming election, number one is the debt. We're over $1 trillion worth of debt now, and we're starting to see the effects of that. Federal government pumped in hundreds of billions of dollars into an economy, and while productivity was limited, and now we're starting to see inflation creep in. I hope I'm not Chicken Little, but I'm quite worried that that will start leading to inflation, more and more inflation, more and more higher interest rates, and before you know it, a lot of people could be in trouble with housing, farms, the list goes on. My biggest reason for running, I guess, is that I have been a bit disillusioned by the coalition government. Once upon a time they used to stand up for my beliefs, and I've seen in the last decade or so them slowly moving away. Now I must say, at our first debate, it might have been seen that I was picking on Mr Colton a bit too much, and I guess that's my history. I've been a National Party voter all my life, but I guess I'd make it clear that the worst thing in my mind is a Labor and Greens government. So, full disclosure, voting for me does not necessarily mean you won't get Mr Colton, like it'll definitely mean you won't get a Labor Greens government. I'd just like to finish off. I was reading through some old speeches the other day and found this little segment, and it seems to encapsulate exactly what the Liberal Democrats are about. And I will read it, so I don't mince words, because I think he's a great man. There can be no national progress except through the efforts of the individual. That life should be free and horizons wide. It's Robert Menzies in 1946. I think that emulates the Liberal Democrats. Thank you.
Have you had a chance to think about this, or did you have the answer before you go?
What was the question?
What's Parks led by Pete Rothwell mean for the members of Narrabri District Chamber of Commerce?
Well, it's fantastic. Like when you've got such enthusiastic groups, like it makes it such a great point of contact to come and speak to, and you can cover the needs of the community very quickly. And that's one of my biggest passions, is talking to community groups and representing their views on the big stage.
Terrific. Last but not least, fresh from Broken Hill. Mark, you're up. Thank you. Without any further ado, Mark.
Thanks, Russell. Good evening, everyone. Apologies for being late. Yes, believe it or not, we were enclosed in Broken Hill with weather, and so we finally got picked up the car, and I can tell you there's a lot of trucks and a lot of rainfall between here and Coonabarabran tonight. It's very wet out there, so thank you for the indulgence of allowing me to be late. This is the sixth election that I've contested for the seat of Parks, and I know most people here would know me as a politician and a member for Parks, but I thought it might be worthwhile to actually touch on who Mark Colton is, because I was actually 50 years old when I made my first speech in Parliament, and so I had a life before being a member of the Australian Parliament, and I live at Warialda. I've lived at Gravesend or Warialda or within 50 kilometres of Warialda all my life. Robin and I are in a farming business, and while I went farming every day, she went off for 30 years as a local school teacher. And so, we're pretty typical of a lot of families, raised 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy, educated at the local school, and they've now grown up, and we've got a couple of daughters in Tamworth now, and 4 grandkids, so it's a different stage of our life. But as a member of the Warialda and Gravesend communities, I've always been involved in the community, and I'm a life member of the Warialda Apex Club. I was the president of the Warialda Show Society. I was the vice captain of the local bushfire brigade. In 2004, with the amalgamation of part of Barraba, Bingra and Yalleroy Shire, Ryder Shire was formed, and there was a lot of angst about and what that meant. People really weren't happy about the amalgamation, and so one thing led to another, and I ended up becoming a councillor on the very first Guida Council, and at the very first meeting of the Guida Council, I got elected mayor, and that was a life-changing experience for me, because having worked mainly on my own or with my brothers or with 1 or 2 staff, being part of a larger organisation, 150 people, the largest employer in the district, and actually having responsibility for sort of driving the community. So it was something that I really, really enjoyed. And the Guarda Shire received the A.R. Blewett Award in its first year as the best performing shire in New South Wales. So it's something I'm incredibly proud of. The opportunity came up in 2007 to contest the seat of Parkes. I actually I actually announced my intention to contest Guida 2 weeks before it was abolished, and so there was lots of rallies here, you might remember, in that year of 2007 to try and save the seat. We managed to save the seat, but not the name, which is unfortunate. Parkes was then 107,000 square k's. After a couple of changes, it's now 393. So it's about half of New South Wales. So the other day I had the opportunity to go back to my very first speech in Parliament, which was in February 2008. So about 14 years ago, a bit more. And it was interesting. The things that I highlighted in that were, I spoke about the death of my mother. My mother died at the age of 67 from cancer. And to watch someone as close as your mother pass away, and the trials of seeking treatment a long way away from home had a lasting impression on me. And so, I was pleased earlier this year that we were able to open the Western Cancer Centre servicing Western New South Wales, so that people don't have to travel the large distances to get that life-saving treatment, because quite frankly many of the people in the West were actually choosing not to have treatment and passing away rather than having to travel to the capital city. So the other thing that I mentioned was a better deal for local government. Coming from local government, that seemed an obvious thing to say at the time, but up until June last year I spent a period of time as the local government minister in the Australian Parliament, and I was able to show great support, and we actually went to local government, great partnership through drought, and Narrabri Council was a partner in that in funding that came through to stimulate the local economy during the drought, employ local people and keep things going. When the pandemic started, through local roads and community infrastructure, we once again put money directly through to local council, so that it was the quickest way of getting a stimulus into a community. And councils, I've got 18 councils right across the Parkes electorate, and Narrabri did a sensational job in getting those jobs going and keeping the community going. The other thing that I mentioned in February 2008 was my belief that the Inland Rail would transform inland New South Wales and the Parkes electorate. Now, I know there's some controversy, and I heard Jim's question, and I've spoken to Jim before, about here in Narrabri, but I firmly believe that this project will transform regional New South Wales. Already we are starting to see a lot of interest from investors to look at value-adding opportunities with fertiliser production, growing the recycling industry that already is well established here, and but as well as that, getting a better deal for local farmers with cheaper rail and more effective rail freight into ports, as well as other domestic markets. For the first time in the history of the country, every capital city will be connected by rail, and onto that, having the funding to upgrade from Narrabri to Tarrawong, so that the Port of Newcastle can take the higher capacity trains that will come from the north. Over the period of time, I've had an opportunity to represent Australia in trade and negotiated Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which is opening up opportunities to our north. I was at the first ministerial meeting of the Trans-Pacific Partnership in Japan, and that agreement with the countries right around the Pacific, the largest trade agreement in the history of the globe, is now enabling us to sell barley, for instance, into Mexico, and opening up opportunities, because we have done well trading with China, but there are difficulties there now, and so to broaden out the markets for our produce are incredibly important. As Regional Health Minister, I was able to double the number of training places for junior doctors in the regional area, so they get that experience. I was able to, for the first time, graduate the Medicare payments to regional areas so that a doctor practitioner at Narrabri gets a bulk bills gets a higher rebate than one, say, operating out of a capital city. And so, you know, there's plenty to do, but the issue we have at the moment, with unemployment in this country at 4% and unemployment in the Parkes electorate below the national average, the real opportunities that we have are challenges as well, and we need to grow our population. We need to be able to bring the skills in that we need to reach that potential right across from all the professions, health, legal, all the professions and the trades, teaching. There's jobs for a lot of people, and I think that's the challenge that we face going into the future. So it's been a great privilege to represent this wonderful electorate for the last 14 and a half years, and I'm asking for your support to support me to hopefully do it for another 3. Thanks, Russell.
Thanks. Mark Colton, Lead Parks. What's it mean for the members of Narrabri Chamber of Commerce?
Well, Russell, as you know, the Chamber itself is an organisation. I've had a relationship and on numerous occasions have been to your meetings. But with regards to your members, I think the focus of a coalition government has been through small business. And so we've seen through the pandemic, the JobKeeper program kept a lot of businesses in this town going by keeping their employers, kept businesses going, kept people from becoming on the unemployment queue. Programs like the Instant Asset Write-Off has had an enormous boom for businesses from tradespeople to farmers to transport operators to coffee shops, being able to upgrade their equipment and get a full write-off. In the budget, to upgrade your IT or train your staff, now it's 120% deduction of your tax to give people those skills we need. More money for apprentices, because I know that's something close to your heart, Russell, is keeping our young people here. So more money not only for the businesses but for the apprentices, so that we can actually give our young people a pathway to a rewarding career in their local area. So business to me is the backbone. It's the driver of this country. That's probably the difference between my party and the Labor Party, is that we believe that we do things through the private small businesses rather than big government knowing everything.
Right. Question.
We've discussed a lot of things. I guess my question is, if you're successful again this year in Parkes, given that all the positives from Inland Rail will still happen with the cheaper and much less disruptive rail line 40 kilometres near Narrabri, given that all the positives are still there and most of the negatives are removed, what will be your next step as member for Parkes for the Inland Rail problem at Narrabri?
Thanks, Jim. Look, my position's well known on Inland Rail. I'm very supportive of it. I might make comment of an ad that's in the Courier this week, but the route is not my route, okay? I am not an engineer. I don't purport to know how to build railway lines, but I do support the processes that are put in place, and you've got to back the process. And quite frankly, you've got your ideas, Jim, of what should happen here. If we listen loudly to people 12 months ago, the railway line wouldn't be going to Narrabri because it would be going to Walgett instead. And so the processes are there. There's at the moment the ARTC is about to respond to the numerous questions that came through the EIS, but I will let the process go forth, because I know some people that are not on the line, I know are actively involved, but my concern is that the people on this 300 kilometre corridor have got some big decisions to make, and some people it means selling the house, and some people in Narrabri already have. And to Jack's point of spreading this out, the last thing we need to do is to have that uncertainty over a longer period of time, because there's a cloud hanging over people. I don't deny, Jim, that the impacts on individuals for this, for some people in particular, is very, very great. But the worst thing you can do is to have that level of uncertainty for a long time, because then how are these people going to make the decisions they need to do? And so every time, as the local member, I've given you access to the Minister, the head of the ARTC, the head of Inland Rail. I brought them to town and without an opinion of my own as to what should be what. My job as the local member is to give everyone here access to the decision makers, and I believe that I've done that.
Yes, Mr. Colton, Chris Brazier. I've worked in local government for 27 years all up in fairly high middle management positions. I wrote to you about my concerns about the Inland Rail, flooding and the impact on our community that will live very close to the line.
Excuse me, Chris. We made a decision earlier on. If you're going to talk about the same Inland Rail project as Jim spoke.
No, it's not. It's just a statement. And I did write to you, and at least you did get back with Mr. Joyce, didn't even bother. But in my time in 27 years in the councils, both Shire and electricity, I've never read so much bureaucratic bull dust in all my life. So that's just my statement there. But my main concern is, or my one question to you, is what have you, or the Nationals, or for that matter, the Coalition ever done for this part of the town, or this part of the electorate?
Okay, so through our support of business, Narrabri is prospering. The research station out here, the funding that is going into the reason that wheat is being grown now at places like Walgett and beyond is because the research that's going on here. We've recently supported the Dryland Cotton Research Organisation with some work that they're doing on cutting edge technology. I'll back the Inland Rail on this, and I know that there's a lot of people in this town that are very, very supportive and are looking forward to that, and I'll steer the course on that, following the procedures that need to happen. And so I think it's pretty obvious that Narrabri is a thriving community, and I'm not taking credit for that, but if Narrabri wasn't well represented federally, it would not nearly be the strong growing community that it is now. And so I've worked very closely with council right through the 14 years that I've been here, and we've worked through numerous projects. The facades on the main street came from Commonwealth funds, that the upgrade there, the upgrade of the main street came through another program that I instigated. There's numerous bridges around that have been funded by my partnership with the local council. And so, I'll stand on my record as someone that is a strong representative of my entire electorate, but Narrabri in particular.
Mr. Colton, my name's Peter Lee. As former Minister for Regional Communications, did you ever once try to hold the ABC to their charter?
Oh, Peter. I tell people, Peter, that if I'm reincarnated, I'm coming back as a benevolent dictator. ABC would be first on the list, but it's a discussion we have a lot of. As Regional Comms Minister, Paul Fletcher had responsibility for that, and but on broader terms, I am concerned, and I'll sort of, not because he's taking notes and I want to make a good impression, but we're lucky that we've got an independent news organisation in this town. Because to your point, Peter, now what worries me is that the news has become so polarised that if you want to think one thing, you watch the ABC and that reinforces your worldview, and if you want to see another thing, you watch Sky and that reinforces your worldview. And really, we're running out of places to go where we can actually get unbiased, actual facts and news that we want. And so You know, I would like to have been in a position to do something with the ABC, and I think having said that, I need to be careful. I actually think the bush is well served by our regional stations. I have a good relationship with the Tamworth ABC, Western Plains, Broken Hill, and they pretty good at local news. But I
agree with that. Most people would agree with that.
Yeah, but
also agree that they're doing their best to get you out of government.
Well, I can't complain about the bias locally, but I tell you what, I can't watch Q&A. Quite frankly, I turn the radio off when the country hour comes on. I think it's 3 crap stories and then 10 anonymous texts read out is not journalism. But we don't have that direct control over the content of the ABC, and I think that people are leaving it in droves, but particularly the metropolitan one. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mark. That's it. You had your 3 questions.
Yes,
thanks,
yeah.
Mark.
Thanks
Thank you very
very
much. Thanks, Lee.
So thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. We appreciate your time, and we appreciate the fact that you're prepared to take on a huge job. It's probably the biggest job in federal politics in Australia, or certainly the biggest area. So that in itself makes it one of the biggest jobs. So you're thrill seekers, all of you, and we thank you for taking our interest at heart. Thank you very much.